In the shadows of a world filled with warriors, magic, and dragons, hides hunters obscured in the dark, waiting for their prey. Among these killers, one group stands atop the rest as the most feared assassins in all of Tamriel, the Dark Brotherhood. With the help of today's hero, Agent 74, we plan to become the greatest assassin in all of Skyrim and answer the question, can you beat the Dark Brotherhood questline as the devs intended? Now the objectives of this video are pretty simple. We will be completing the full Dark Brotherhood questline as well as all side quests and optional contracts while playing on expert difficulty with some restrictions. The restrictions for this run are that we must be a pure assassin, meaning we will rely on stealth attacks as much as possible. Next, all the gear in this run must be attained from either the Dark Brotherhood or taken from somebody we've killed. The last is that the only skills allowed in this run are Sneak, Alchemy, Light Armor, Lockpicking, One-Handed, Archery, and Speech. Like in the previous dev intended runs, we will be avoiding exploits and cheese as much as possible. Now with Agent 74 created, it was time to get started. So after kissing a block of wood and then being saved by a convenient drag attack, we were up and running. The key word here would be running. Since I wasn't really able to do a lot of sneaking and assassinating during this intro section, I would decide to just rush through it as fast as possible. This would actually kind of backfire because somehow I went through it so fast that it seemingly broke and Hadvar never even showed up to send us to Riverwood to complete the intro. This would cause me to waste a few minutes trying to get the quest to progress. But after a while, I just gave up and decided it was going to be broken for the run and left. Luckily, once I left the general area of Helgen, the quest would just bypass and we could continue the main story. Now it's not a huge deal, but I do plan to speak to Balgriff at least to prevent the dragons from spawning. Now with us free and able to get the run truly started, our first objective was to grab the Thief Stone, while grabbing every alchemy ingredient on the way so we can make poisons. So after grabbing the stone, we'd find our first victim in a lone fisherman. After helping to liberate his soul from this plane of existence, we'd finally have our first bit of gear for the run, including a weapon and a fresh disguise to hide our murderous intentions. With our dignity protected and our bloodlust sated for a moment, we'd make our way to Whiterun to yap with Balgriff and prevent any dragons from singeing off our cat hair. Now with all that taken care of, we'd finally start doing the Dark Brotherhood quest. And the first up was to help a crazy jester with his cart's broken wheel to the northeast of Whiterun. After convincing a local farmer to help the madman, we'd be handsomely rewarded. With our new shiny gold, we could take a carriage up to Windhelm to investigate some rumors about someone trying to summon the Dark Brotherhood. Now this should have been as easy as entering the Arantino home and starting the quest. However, we had hit today's first roadblock. Turns out, I didn't have any lockpicks, since we ran through the intro and the fisher didn't have any. Since we couldn't get the door open without them, we now had to get our blood-soaked hands on some lockpicks. To get our hands on some lockpicks, I would head to the Ember Shard mine to make some bandits disappear. With some more blood on my hands, we'd get a fancy new axe and the prize of the day, a single lockpick. Now with a lockpick and a troublesome door open, we'd speak to Arantino and get our first contract for Grella the Kind. Taking the cart down to Riften, we'd enter the city and begin to stalk our first target. Annoyingly, this would take a while, because Grella wasn't feeling very sleepy and kept wandering around. But luckily for us, she would sit down at her desk, and the fatigue must have hit her like an axe, because she then proceeded to take a very long nap right after. Our quick and quiet getaway was foiled by trying to leave through the wrong door, but luckily we were so skilled that we managed to slink away with the guards completely unawares of any crimes I may or may not have committed. Speaking to Arantino, we'd collect the reward for a job well done and would head back to the studying zones for a nap in a bed that totally doesn't have the blood of an innocent fisher on it. However, we were rudely awakened from my lovely dreams of gotcha poles and delicious tea, where we would find ourselves kidnapped by a real member of the Dark Brotherhood. Turns out identity theft is no joke, and we may or may not have stolen a contract that maybe didn't totally belong to us. Because of this, the Dark Brotherhood now expects us to pay for our little oopsies with blood. A simple payment really. One of the people in this room has a contract put out for them, and we have to decide who has the contract and kill them. Luckily for me, I am a master at the art of deduction. After listening to each of the potential targets, we'd think long and hard about the choice, and then just choose to kill everyone. Okay, so after thinking about it for a second, I started to think that maybe the devs probably wanted me to make an actual choice, and so we would reload the autosave and make an actual choice this time. On the second go around, we'd once again listen to the potential targets before making our choice, choosing the Khajiit merchant Vasha. The reasoning was actually pretty simple. He straight up said he had people trying to kill him every day, so in my mind, today was likely no different, except I feel he may not have this problem going forward. Returning to Astrid, she was really forward and wanted to take our relationship to the next level, even inviting me to meet her family. With that, we would be set free and we could finally leave the shack. On the way back to civilization, well, not really civilization since it's Morthal, but I digress. We start getting chased by the world's most persistent mud crab, who begins hunting me like a T-1000, even into Morthal. His presence was so intimidating that even the courier who wanted to give out flyers for the orphanage, which we have totally never been to before, was trembling in his boots, and on top of that, even the guards would not dare to challenge him in combat. Right as I was about to try and defeat the most dangerous threat that Skyrim had ever seen, a new hero would take center stage. The town's local wizard would summon a mighty storm atronach and vanquish the terror. With that, we were able to fast travel and could finally make our way to Falkreath to meet up with the Dark Brotherhood. Giving the super secret password to the world's creepiest and slowest door, we'd enter the sanctuary and begin our new life. One quick chat with Astrid later, and we'd officially join the family, and we would be given our new, shiny Dark Brotherhood armor. And it wasn't even shiny from blood this time. Asking Astrid about the Dark Brotherhood, she would tell us about how the Brotherhood deals with bounties, which would be a useful mouse tool for later. After listening to our new family do a welcome song and dance for us, Nazir would finally set us up with our first official contracts. The first would be a beggar, the next being an ex-miller, and the final being a mine boss. The first target we'd set our eyes on was the ex-miller, who was paranoid that someone was out to get him, which, as it turns out, he was correct. Making our way past Windhelm, we would sneak up to his camp like a shadow, and without him even knowing I was there, we would eliminate our first target. Next, we would take a trip to Dawnstar to help lighten the competition in the mining market. Following our target through Dawnstar, we would wait for the perfect moment to strike. Finally, our target would head to bed, and we would help them to get a good night's sleep. Lastly, we'd make the long walk to Iverstead to work on eliminating the local beggar. At first, we'd wait for him to go to sleep so we can get a nice, easy elimination. However, Narfi must have had some insomnia since he refused to sleep no matter how long I watched him from the shadows. Finally, giving up on him sleeping, we would creep down to the shoreline, poison daggers in hand, and would quietly dispatch our target. We'd even hide his body for good measure. Returning back to the Brotherhood, we'd find things that got a little more interesting while we were gone. While we were away, Cicero, the mad jester from earlier, and the Night Mother had arrived at the sanctuary. Once the commotion had died down, Astrid would assign us our first big boy contract. But first, we'd pop over to our main man Nazir to hand in our smaller contracts. Now is on to our big boy contract, which would send us to speak to a client in Markarth. For this contract, we would be tasked with eliminating a messy romance gone wrong. Turns out our client got romantically entangled with the leader of a bandit group, who then used her to rob her friends while they grieved the death of their daughter. So now she wishes to see both the bandit dead, but also the family's other daughter, so they can fully understand the loss they've had by kicking her out. Since we'd have to take out two targets, we would try and go after the easier sounding target, which in my opinion was the other daughter. Because we'd have to infiltrate a bandit den for the second part of the contract, I'd launch into my evil master plan. We would spend the next hour following the daughter all over Windhelm to level our sneak, so that we could become so sneaky even the shadows wouldn't see us. Unfortunately, this plan would be thrown for a loop when the target would go home. Turns out they had an expert level lock on the door, which we struggled to open, but even worse was after getting inside, despite not being detected, the residents would start threatening to call the guards. Because we couldn't follow the target anymore, we would start following a random guard to keep leveling ourselves. Finally, with an hour of my life wasted, we would reach level 50 in stealth and could grab the Assassin's Blade perk, so our daggers had some real bite to them. Breaking back into the Shadow Shield house, I think our target may be possessed, since she is able to instantly sense me and talk to me all while sleeping and floating in the air on top of that. Doing the mercy of an exorcism, we'd banish the evil from her body, as well as also her own life force, but that's a small price to pay for safety, I assure you. With the first target down, we would make our way for the Dwarven Ruins, which housed the bandits. Unfortunately for us, the bandits outside would spot us before we could even get close, but after we had taken them out, we would get a major gear upgrade by swiping a bow off one of the victims. Now, I don't plan to go full stealth archer, but this is a useful tool that I will be taking advantage of. Once inside, we'd slowly and stealthily start dispatching bandits in our path. While we did this, Skyrim's incredible AI logic would fully shine. I gotta wonder what went through the mind of the bandits. Jerry is laying dead, pumped full of arrows. Must have been the wind. Finally reaching the target, and we were able to get a unique elimination on our target. Or well, we should have been able to at least. What I would learn is that apparently bandits are immortal gods and could take a giant bolt straight to the face without batting an eye. For some reason, unless the bandits became aware of my presence, they were immune to my rods from God. So after way too many resets, we were able to take out the bandits with the fancy weapon the devs had expected you to use. However, the target himself was still unaffected, so we would give up and just use a dagger to take him out. With the targets eliminated, we complete the contract and head back to Astrid, who wasn't too happy with Cicero and wanted us to spy on him to uncover a conspiracy to overthrow her. To do this, we'd hide in the Night Mother's coffin to catch him and his co-conspirators in the act. While we hid, we'd find that no one was there, only Cicero yapping to himself and the Night Mother. In our stinky hiding place, the Night Mother would begin to speak to us and call us the listener. After accidentally falling out of the coffin, we deal with a very pissed Cicero by telling him we spoke to his beloved mother, causing him to now be our best friend. When the Night Mother spoke to us, she attempted to send us after a contract in a Nordic ruin. However, when we told Astrid, she didn't know what to do yet and instead would send us to do something else once she decided. This would be in the form of 2 more contracts from Nazir. First, for a bard, and the second for a vampire who runs a mill. Traveling to Morthal, we'd find the bard in a local inn. Sitting and waiting patiently, the bard would eventually go to bed, and when he did, we'd give him a little stab and leave the scene like nothing had happened. Unfortunately, while the bard was super easy, the vampire was much less so. The vampires, no matter what I did, would never go to sleep, so every time I tried to enter their home, they got pissed. Eventually, after days of waiting, a few reloads, and a lot of dead chickens, I was mad at them, okay? The vampire would finally stop being a NEET and leave the house. In a tragic turn of events, he would sustain a fatal woodcutting accident that had absolutely nothing to do with me. With our contracts finished, we'd head back to the Brotherhood, where Astrid, who had calmed down, would approach us and tell us to go ahead with our trip to Vollenrund and find out about the contract that Night Mother had for us. Before that, I'd quickly turn in our contracts with the Nazir. Arriving in Vollenrund, we'd speak with the client about the contract. The target in question? The Emperor himself. With that, we'd be given an amulet to sell for the contract's expenses. Return to Astrid, see it excitedly accept the contract, sending us to sell the necklace to Delvin Mallory, a member of the Thieves Guild. Sneaking our way through the right way, we'd eventually reach the Ragged Flagon and speak with Delvin. Selling off the necklace, which turned out to be for a member of the Elder Council, we'd receive a letter of credit for Delvin and would head back to the Brotherhood. Back to Astrid, she'd start laying out the master plan. Step 1 would be slaying the Emperor's cousin during her wedding in Solitude. During our briefing, Astrid would also tell us to make sure to do the job while Vici addresses the wedding guest. With that, we were off to Solitude to attend a wedding. Though on the way into the city, we'd find a silly little bug, which is that no matter where you are in Solitude, you get to hear Rodvir's execution happen in the distance. Arriving at the wedding, and the security is super lax. We literally just walked up. Waiting around and faking pleasantries, we let the bride and groom revel in their happiness, while we wait for my ultimate victory, L! Wait, wrong franchise. With the happy couple moving up to the balcony to give their lovely speech, we'd begin to move in for the kill. While the couple gave their speech, we'd try our best recreation of the Red Wedding, just without a bad final season. Now with the shock of a very loud and very public murder, the guards were none too pleased with me. At this point, one of the Brotherhood members is supposed to show up and help get the heat off you, to aid in your escape. But I'm pretty sure it bugged out for me since the guards were very, very interested in making me into a pincushion as I ran. Finally swimming to safety, we'd make our way back to the Brotherhood. With Vici taken care of, the path toward the Emperor himself now lay open. The next part of our grand scheme was to speak to Gabriella, who had a plan cooking up to deal with the Emperor's personal guard. To do this, our plan was to break the commander of the guard by killing his son and framing him in a plot to kill the Emperor. To do this, we were tasked to steal the travel schedule, then kill him and plant the incriminating evidence. For a bonus, we were also tasked with doing the deed in a major city so he may be discovered quickly. Reaching Dragonbridge, we'd find the headquarters of the Pentus Oculus. As we tried to infiltrate the building to steal the plans, we'd have a very awkward interaction with the commander as he stared at the most wanted man in Solitude, and the assassin he was tasked was stopping right in the eyes. With that awkward interaction over, we'd swipe the schedule and to begin to follow our target. Now since I'm incapable of reading, I would try to blindly fast travel to cities and wait for the target to show up, which did not work very well. Eventually, we'd end up finding the target resting in the Riften barracks. With our target in sight, all we needed now was for him to go to take a nap. However, despite the fact that it was nighttime, he would refuse to sleep, and would proceed instead to mock me by playing musical chairs right in front of me. Eventually enough time would pass that he would decide it was time to hit the road, and begin to leave Riften. Seeing my chance slip through my fingers, I would try and kill Gaius Maro as he walked, but unfortunately for me, since he was walking, I wasn't able to hit him with the full power attack, leaving just enough health for him to survive the first hit, alerting the guards. After lots and lots of failed attempts, we'd concede that we were not going to be able to get him here. With that embarrassing show, we'd finally try reading his schedule and would set up at Whiterun, with the hope that we'd finally catch him sleeping. My frustration, his stay at the Banner Mare was much the same, with him sitting in the main hall and drinking and eating. To maintain my cover, we'd try and sit in the corner, looking mysterious and cool. Until Yasila decided to sit with us and try to flirt with me. With another failure in Whiterun, we'd make our way to Markarth, where to our glee, we'd find Morrow sitting in the guard's barracks, but alone this time. Sneaking behind Morrow, we'd strike from the shadows. With the evidence planted and no one the wiser at my involvement, we'd quietly leave Markarth.
This is Markarth, traveler. Safest city in the Reach. Well, what happened?
Back at the Brotherhood, Cicero decided to be a little silly while we were gone and got a bit stabby when Astrid dissed the Night Mother before fleeing. So, after snooping through his room, we'd find clues leading us to the abandoned Dawnstar Sanctuary. Reaching Dawnstar, we find a wounded Armbjorn sitting outside, having chased Cicero all the way north. After convincing him to head back home and get medical help, we head inside after Cicero. Inside the sanctuary, everything went amazingly, and by that I mean terrible. Turns out trying to sneak our way through this section while using only a dagger wasn't really possible, forcing us to embrace the full stealth archer build. Slowly moving through the sanctuary, trying not to have a stroke, we'd finally reach Cicero. Now, unfortunately for us, despite the claims that Cicero was on death's door, he sure springs to the step the second we try and kill him. After a few retries, we managed to get a sneak power attack off, which drops Cicero's health super low, which allows us to barely make it through the fight. With Cicero dead, I totally respected him and definitely did not teabag his body while calling him all sorts of insults. Returning back to the Brotherhood, we inform Astrid of Cicero's fate, leaving out some details. Now, with that little distraction taken care of, it was back to the Emperor. The final preparations we had to do was to kill a chef named the Gourmet, so we could commit some more identity fraud. Now, to kill the Gourmet, we first had to find him. Unfortunately for us, he's kept himself anonymous, but we managed to find a personal signed copy of one of his cookbooks. So all we had to do was intimidate the recipient into telling us the identity of the Gourmet. After learning his identity, the most tragic accident happens in the Markarth kitchens, as the head chef tragically lost his life in a potato accident. Truly, a tragic event. Head to the Nightgate Inn, we closed in our prey. While he slept, the Gourmet fell ill, so we would have to help carry on his work by becoming the new Gourmet. With the deed done, we'd help the Gourmet to a nice, cozy home in a barrel, and head back to Festus. With all the prep done, it was time for the main event. So with that, we were sent off to the Castle Dower in Solitude to make a new emperor. Now, here's where the bounty system we talked about earlier matters, because it turns out the guards are still a little pissed off about the Red Wedding and attempt to arrest me on the spot. As Astrid told us, the best way to deal with this is to just pay the bounty off. How this doesn't instantly blow my cover on the spot and lead me back to the executioner's block is beyond me. With that small hiccup taken care of, we start to approach Commander Morrow. However, I decided that maybe pulling up in my Dark Brotherhood robes might not be the best idea, so I'd switch to some more appropriate attire, and the finisher is my hat. Wait, where is my chef's hat? No, I can't be a chef without my silly little hat. Sadly, I realized I don't have my silly little hat, so we'll have to go without it. Entering the kitchen, we go to start cooking before the game hears my cries and gives me a chef's hat. Now, with my hat, I can truly start to act and get into character. My goal now is to make the world's most wonderful dish. With my hat, I am now more powerful than Gordon Ramsay, and we start instructing our sous chef into whipping up the most wonderful dish. In the process, we may have accidentally put in a super uber poisonous root into the stew, but it's not like that would kill anyone, right? With the finer points of our cooking skills not appreciated, I would decide to make a hasty exit, before being caught by Commander Morrow. Turns out the whole plot was a setup by a member of the Brotherhood. The Commander gets us, and the Dark Brotherhood gets to keep living. However, as it turns out, making a deal with the father of a guy you just killed may or may not be a good idea, and Morrow decides he's just gonna destroy the Brotherhood anyway. Managing to escape into the wilderness, we make our way back to the sanctuary, only to find it overrun with Pentus Oculatus members. Slowly picking them off with our bow, we'd start to make our way inside. Inside, we'd find the place set ablaze. We'd start quietly picking off guards as we move deeper to look for survivors. Unfortunately, most of the family is already dead, minus Nazir, who managed to arrive just in time to help fight off the attackers. With the place on the verge of burning to ash, the Night Mother calls to us to get into her coffin. Once inside, she somehow jumps us into the water below. After waking back up, we get pulled out of the water by a few of the remaining members of the Brotherhood. At the same time, the Night Mother tells us to find Astrid, prompting us to search the scorched halls of our former home for her. After finding the barbecued leader of the Brotherhood, we would learn that she was the one who made the deal with Morrow, and now she had one last contract for us, this time herself. After completing her last contract for us, we'd get a cool new dagger. While the other members hung their heads, we returned back to the Night Mother, who had decided the Brotherhood didn't hear no bell, and as such, the Emperor was still our target. Heading to Whiterun, we meet back up with Mortier to find the real location of the Emperor, which was on his ship moored near Solitude. We try and fast travel to a location just a bit away, however in true Skyrim fashion, the game starts being weird. As soon as I enter the hold of Solitude, guards just start literally spawning in the swamps to try and arrest me for my new bounty. At first, I tried to just run from them since I didn't want to pay it off. However, more random guards continue to just keep spawning right on top of me as we go, all but forcing me to pay the bounty since I can't exactly sneak when the game just decides that my dummy thick cheeks keep alerting all of the guards in the hold to my presence. Finally, with the bounty dealt with, we could play the game as intended again, sneaking onto the docks to settle the score with Commander Morrow. After reuniting with the sun, we start to swim for the Emperor's ship. Sneaking aboard, we quickly dispatch a few sailors and begin making our way to the Emperor's chambers. At his chambers, we attempted to pick the lock to his door, but we were foiled by a strong lock. With that plan thrown out, we'd begin looking for an alternate way in. Luckily for us, the captain of his guard also had a key, so all we had to do was liberate it from him. Slightly easier said than done, but we managed to sneakily take him down, and with that it was on to the Emperor. The Emperor was actually quite unsurprised to see us, and would actually welcome us in. He would ask that we hear him out on one small favor after we do the deed, which is to kill the person who gave us the contract. After hearing him out, it was on doing the deed and assassinate the real Emperor this time. With him dead, we'd quickly take our leave and report to Mortier. With the contract completed, we were told the location of our payment and were able to be done with each other. While I could have honored the late Emperor's request, I figured it wasn't exactly great for business for an assassin to be killing his own clients, so we'd leave without bloodshed. Retrieving our payment, we'd head back to Dawnstar to tell Nazir the good news. With the job completed, Nazir would have a new task for us, and a convenient way for us to spend the 20k we'd just earned. He would send us to Delvin Mallory so we could buy renovations for our new home in Dawnstar, which, as luck had it, also cost about 20k to complete. After annoyingly going through the menus, and then back in, and then back out, and then back in, and then back out, over and over again, we'd have fully restored the Brotherhood and could finally complete the main quest line. With this, we'd start on all the side quests attached to the Brotherhood. The first thing we began to work on was the optional contracts Nazir had available. His first batch would include a scavenger, a Khajiit merchant, and a hunter. Heading to the north of Dawnstar, we'd reach the scavenger. Now if you watched the last video, this scavenger might look a little bit familiar, since we helped liberate him of some goods last time. So after giving him the same treatment as we did previously, we move on to the Khajiit merchant. While hunting for the Khajiit caravan, we'd randomly stumble across Babette in the wild, which was kinda cool since I didn't realize you could actually find other members of the Brotherhood in random encounters. Neat! Finally, we tracked the merchant down to Whiterun and began to figure out the best way to get to him. Unfortunately, he and the rest of the caravan suffered from insomnia since no one wanted to sleep, making it a bit hard to get my target alone. Since he seemed to be a bit more difficult, I'd pivot to the hunter, who luckily was also an innkeep in Whiterun. So when he went to his room to get some shut-eye, we'd make sure he never had to worry about his alarm waking him up ever again. Eventually, after waiting a while, I decided the best option was just to snipe the merchant with a bow and hope that no one noticed, to which, to my luck, no one did. After quietly fleeing the scene of the crime, we'd head back to Nazir to turn in all of our contracts. With that set of contracts turned in, Nazir would give us our next one, this time for a servant working inside of a bandit occupied fort. Now since this contract would almost certainly be difficult to do quietly, I decided to start doing some radiant contracts for the mother to level sneak. After doing a ton of them with very minimal level gain, we would start just following around one of the targets in a circle around Markarth for like 30 minutes to level our sneak. Eventually, after all of that, we'd reach level 80 in sneak and would grab the last perk I needed. Since I wasn't super confident in my ability to sneak through the fort yet, I would go off and do some other side quests. The first sending us to go get our fortunes read by Lava the Feeble in Whiterun. During our fortune reading, she would reveal to us that a previous member of the Brotherhood had left behind all of his stuff to us, and now we had to go get it. Unfortunately, it was in a Forsworn hideout to the south of Solitude. Slowly using a combo of Stealth Archer and sneaking with a dagger, we'd clear our way through the hideout. Eventually, as we took out each of the Forsworn on our path, we'd come across two Forsworn and watch as they shared a passion-filled kiss. Unfortunately, we'd have to ruin a beautiful yaoi love story in a Shakespearean way. At least they'd be reunited in the afterlife. Inside the main hideout, we would slowly snipe the witches, and somehow they were completely unable to notice me doing it, despite the fact that they literally saw their friends die. Moving through the hideout, we'd eventually collect the new fancy robes, and since we had gotten this deep in the dungeon, I just decided to finish it anyway. At this point, I'd also quickly knock out the treasure hunt quest, which was very underwhelming. After giving each of the Brotherhood's totally ethically sourced friends a few bonks, they'd each reveal the location of their treasures. After collecting these people's life savings, which were hidden in terrible spots, very, very close to cities. Honestly, they kinda deserved to be robbed for how bad the spots they were. We'd finished the last of the Brotherhood side quest, and it was on to finally finishing the contracts. With all the prep done, it was on to the fort. Or well, it was supposed to be. Because as soon as I approached the fort, my batteries died and I had to make a quick trip to the store. Now, with fresh batteries, we started to slowly pick off the enemies in the fort as we made our way in. That is, until we get spotted and are forced to flee. However, when I fled, I found the unguarded back door to the fort and was able to slip inside, with the guards none the wiser. Using the powers of stealth we had mastered up to this point, we'd quietly work our way through the lower section of the fort and find our target asleep in their bed. She had a random bandit guarding her, but one quick arrow and he was handled, allowing us to help her get the best sleep of her life. Or maybe her afterlife. With our contract completed, we head back to Nazir to turn in, after which he'd provide us with 2 fresh new targets. This time a Thane of Falkreath, and the other was a mage working with bandits. First up was another infiltration into Dwarven ruins. This time would be a bit more of a challenge due to the pure volume of bandits guarding the single entrance, but after taking out the highest entry, we'd be able to drop down right in front of the entrance and enter unseen. Inside, I'd have to resort to a bit of stealth archery, due to the bandits being super clumped up and watching each other, preventing me from being able to use my daggers. With them dealt with, we were able to move on mostly unimpeded. As we reached the target's room, he had a single guard watching out, but luckily we were able to get just right behind him, and then help him clock out of his shift early. With that, we'd be able to sneak into the mage's bedchamber and terminate his research grant. With our target taken care of, it was time to leave, and I wish I could say it went as well as getting inside, but as we tried to leave, we found out all the ways out were watched by guards, and as we tried to climb a slope to freedom, we would be spotted and forced to flee with our tail between our legs. Fortunately, the Thane would be a much easier target for us, as we wait patiently in the Jarl's longhouse, casing the place, until the Thane would finally decide to go to bed. With the cover of nightfall, we'd slip into his room and make a spot in the Jarl's court for a new Thane. With that handled, it was time for the last contract, a pirate captain named Safia. With our last target in sight, we'd make for Solitude, blade in hand, ready to secure our ultimate victory. Now, while I'd like to say that sneaking onto a pirate ship to assassinate the captain was difficult, it was a bit underwhelming. The crew didn't even bat an eye as I walked past. So, with the quiet thrust of a blade, we'd finish the last contract, completing the Dark Brotherhood in its entirety. As we finished the last quest, I felt a strange voice call out to me, telling me my job wasn't done, and that I needed to head to Whiterun. Arriving in Whiterun, I knew what I had to do. Sneaking out from behind the statue of Talos, our victim would come into sight. With our blade drawn, we'd creep up silently, and like the Reaper himself, deliver peace and quiet to Whiterun once and for all. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please do me the biggest favor and hit the like button, comment, and maybe even subscribe. And if you have anything you'd like to see me do in Skyrim or in any other games, please let me know in the comments down below. With all that said, I will see you lovely leafs in the next video.